Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends and supporters of Eurostat, fans of demography and population statistics. My name is Mariana Kotseva and I'm the Director General of Eurostat, and I'm very pleased and honored today, together with all my colleagues, to welcome you virtually to be with us in order to launch a new interesting product on behalf of Eurostat, produced by Eurostat, which contains a lot of interesting data on population in Europe. And the most important is that these are not just data, these are different tools, graphics, visualizations, and you see other functionalities which allow you to work with this data, to continue their life, in order to bring additional insights on the demographic trends which are so important for the future of Europe. So just one logistical message before we start with the real work. Please send us your questions via Slido, because it's very important also to answer to questions which you have during this event. The connection details are on Eurostat website, just below the screen. Click the link to use your computer or scan the QR code to use your phone. For those who are watching on our Facebook page, you could find the link there. Once again, we are waiting all the time your questions via Slido. So with that, I would like immediately to start on the substance, and I will give the floor virtually to our Commissioner Paolo Gentiloni, who is responsible also for European statistics and who has always been a great supporter of good communication of Eurostat data and making them available to all of you who would like to benefit of this data in your work and daily life.
Good morning to you all. Let me start by thanking Eurostat for this great occasion to introduce their new interactive publication on the demography of Europe. From the wealth of information it provides, I would like to draw your attention to three key issues in particular. Firstly, demographic change in the European Union is a key policy topic for this Commission. In the coming decades, it is expected that the number of older people in the European Union will increase, both in absolute terms and as a proportion of the total population. Birth rates will continue to fall, and Europe's share of the world population will shrink. The pandemic has reiterated how important it is that our policies resonate with people and protect them. We have seen fundamental changes to our way of life and to our economies. The European Union has been able to provide a coordinated response in a wide range of areas, with actions directed at member states, citizens, and businesses. European official statistics play a crucial role in informing the EU decision-making process and our daily lives. This has been the case in times of growth and prosperity, but also now in times of crisis. We as Europeans are proud of the increase in life expectancy and the major decrease in child mortality we have seen in the EU, as confirmed by the Sustainable Development Goals indicators. This goes hand in hand with the successes of our integrated European economy and increasing cohesion and well-being across the EU. Most recently, Eurostat and the national statistical institutes have provided timely and objective information about the impact of the pandemic. The European Statistical Recovery Dashboard, publicly available on the Eurostat website, informs our actions as we work to support the recovery and to shape a better life for tomorrow. Eurostat's demographic releases on weekly deaths and excess mortality form an essential part of the body of statistics, showing how dramatic was the crisis and how it developed across Europe. Notably, in 2020, life expectancy at birth, which had been rising by more than 2 years per decade since the 60s, stagnated, and in several EU member states even declined. This shows that those positive demographic trends we have seen over the last 50 or 60 years should not be taken for granted. Moreover, demographic change is a major phenomenon with cross-cutting impacts. That is why we need accurate and frequently updated European statistics. So, this publication on the demography of Europe is not only important, but also very timely. Secondly, there have been many publications, analyses, and reports on the demography of Europe, including from the Commission. However, what distinguishes this new Eurostat publication is its simple and interactive way of bringing information about European demography to our citizens. Now, more than ever, it is crucial that everyone, not only the professionals, understands demographic change, especially in the context of the Conference on the Future of Europe. Now, every European citizen will be able to easily find clear information based on official statistics, on population size and structure, and on how diverse we are as Europeans. As Commissioner responsible for Eurostat, I'm proud to see the Statistical Office of the European Union leading by example and constantly ensuring such high statistical standards, together with all the national statistics institutes. And thirdly, I strongly support the European statistical system's effort to modernize statistics on population in preparing a modern framework. I trust that European population statistics will be enriched with more detailed information, particularly on regions and migration. Data also need to become more frequent, more timely, and more harmonized. The EU needs an exhaustive enumeration of its population that is comparable across the Union. We also need solid statistics on how the freedom of movement in the EU is exercised, and a clear picture of the characteristics of migration from and to the EU. Statisticians are called upon to report the population figures in a harmonized ways, for instance by using a common definition instead of 27 national ones. This will increase the added value to the EU of population statistics. The decennial population and houses censuses will continue to play a central role. This wealth of data is needed more frequently at the most detailed geographical level. We also need to improve the cost efficiency of statistics and simplify the relevant EU regulation in line with the better regulation agenda. This Commission will follow up on this aspect closely. In conclusion, let me highlight that the policy focus on demographic change in the EU and what this means for well-being and prosperity will continue. Eurostat's publication on the demography of Europe is very timely, and I'm confident it will be well received. So, congratulations to Eurostat and the European statisticians who made this possible. I wish you all the best in continuing this important work. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Commissioner Gentiloni. As you see, as usual, when he comes to talk to us statisticians in the European Union, is pushing us to go into the direction which, of course, we share the same view, to make the data easily understandable and reusable by everybody who needs and who is interested in statistics. So without any ado, I would like immediately to go to the most, I guess, anticipated part of today's event, the presentation of the new interactive publication, Demography of Europe. So for that, I will give the floor to my colleague, Luis Curselli. So Luis will lead you through the publication, and then the whole team will be available to answer to your questions. Luis, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mariana. I will start by sharing my screen because I would like to show this publication live. It's an interactive publication. Therefore, I would like to show the interactivity. So just bear me for one moment. I hope you can see the publication now.
Yes, Luis, everything is fine. It arrived in the digital space. Please go ahead, we see it.
That is good. Thank you very much, Mariana. So I would now like to show this brand new publication to you. But before I do it, I would like to describe a little bit what an interactive publication is. We have a series here at Eurostat of interactive publications. They are aimed on expert users, and they contain short texts describing trends and results. And they also contain interactive visualization where you can choose your country, where you can compare your country with the average of the EU or with other countries. And of course, you can then select different indicators comparing your country with those. So that was a short introduction. Here on the screen, you can see this brand new publication, and you can see here what it looks like. You see here in the middle an introduction, and you see the 4 parts: population structure, population change, population diversity, and marital status. These are quite descriptive titles. The titles here are more telling a message. I will go more into that later on. But before I go to the different parts, I would like to show you our Test Your Knowledge tool. So let's test our knowledge about the future population in 2080 in Europe and the member states. Let's start. So here we have the total population in 2020. I drag. How do I think the population will evolve? I'm guessing just as much as you are. Okay, how did I do? In fact, quite badly. It's decreasing by 2080 according to the projections. Then you can choose whatever member state you would like. Let's just take Belgium as an example. I drag and drop, drag here. How did I do? A little bit better. So there you can choose the country you're interested in and take a guess. So let's go back to the publication itself, and I will start with the first chapter. A growing population except for 2020. Here you see the short text, and it's quite logical to start with the total population in a publication about demography and population. Here you can see the typical interactive visualization we have. And for this one, it's the total population from the 1st of January 2001 until the 1st of January 2021. This is brand new data that we just got a few days ago. You can see here how it has been growing, and then during 2020 declining. This what I just showed is the European Union value. You can then choose again, a country of your choice, and there you see the evolution. Just for your information, these interactive visualizations are directly connected to our online database. However, they are what we say frozen to a specific reference year, to the latest reference year, so that they correspond with the text. In the next edition, we will put in the next reference year and update the text. So We go on to the next part, which is about women and men. The ratio of women compared to men in the EU is 104.7, meaning that there were in 2020 4.7 more women than men on average in the EU. You can see that here. And here in this bubble chart, you can hover and see the value for the different member states. And you can see that the highest values are in Lithuania and Latvia. I continue in this part, and the last part where there is quite some text because there is a lot to say about the population by age group. We call it an aging population. I go down, you see the same kind of interactive visualization, and here we see how the share of those 80 and over has increased from 2001 until 2020 on an EU level. We can also select the different age groups. If we select the youngest age group, we can see how it has decreased during the same time. Another way of looking at the different age groups and the aging of the population is through the median age. Here you can see the trend from 2001, 2010 to 2020. We can select a country. I select the European Union, and the orange little, this is called a bee swarm, and the blue little dots, we call them bees. So the orange dot here is the European Union. You hover over, and here you can see that the median age has increased from 2001 to 2020. You can also, of course, here also select the country you're interested in. You can also select men and women, and here you can see that the median age for men is lower than the one for women in the EU. This is the first part of the publication. The second part, population change, we start with births and death. We scroll down, and here we see the crude birth rate, the same trend from 2001, and the birth rate is the number of live births per 1,000 persons. We can see here the evolution, and we can see that it has decreased. We can also choose the death rate, and we can see that it has increased. The next part is about the fertility rate and getting children. So the fertility rate shows the number of live births per woman. And here again, the same trend from 2001. And you can see that it's in fact slightly increasing on an EU level. We choose another indicator, mean age of women at birth of first child. Here we have data on an EU level from 2013, and you can see that the mothers are getting older from an average age of 28.8 in 2013 up to 29.4 in 2019. The third indicator to be selected here in this visualization is live births from mothers aged 40 and over. And here you can see a real increase from 2001, 2.4 to 2019, 5.4, sorry. Our next part deals with life expectancy. And here you can see, in order not to have trend lines everywhere, we wanted to differentiate a little bit and have different kinds of visualizations. So here we see the life expectancy for different member states. In 2001, that's the cross. In 2010, that's the square. And in 2020, that's the diamond, I've learned that it's called. So you can see that the diamond is on top everywhere, meaning that life expectancy has increased if you compare with 2001 and 2010. However, it is mentioned in the text, and what was also mentioned before, in 2019 it has, in 2020 it has slightly decreased in some member states. We also have data for women, and we also have this data for men. What you also can do with this visualization, if you're only interested in, let's say, 2001, you can deselect the other years and show only that year and rank it accordingly. And then if you want to put it back again, you just click and then you get it back. So you can play around a little bit with the visualizations, and of course, choose whatever indicator you're interested in. What was mentioned before is the weekly deaths, an indicator which was launched at the beginning of 2020 in connection with the COVID-19 pandemic. Here you can choose the member states. We start with Austria because that's the first in the alphabet. And you can see from the first week of 2020 to week 13 in 2021, how the different peaks, how the weekly deaths have evolved, and you can see the different peaks in the weekly deaths. The third part is about population diversity. We start with immigration and emigration, and we are back to the trendline visualization. Here is the evolution since 2010, also for Austria as an example. You can choose immigrants total, meaning those entering the country. You can choose immigrants for the nationals coming back to their country mostly, and immigrants with a foreign citizenship. You can also choose emigrants, which are those leaving the country as a total, the nationals leaving their country, and foreign citizens leaving their residence. As a last indicator, we also have the share of non-nationals. The next chapter is about EU citizens. And this graph you can hover over and see the different values, and you can also up here choose the different years. You see the EU citizens ranked who are living in another EU member state. So the top are Romanian citizens. Over 3 million Romanians live in another member state. Second is Polish citizens, and third are Italian citizens. New EU citizens, we call this part. It's the acquisition of citizenship. Here you can see on the right-hand side the top 3 recipient countries of a European citizenship. The top one is Morocco, and then it's from Albania, and then the UK. I will show you quite an interesting evolution. In 2016, the top 3 was Morocco, Albania, and Turkey. This remained for 2017. It remained for 2018, and in 2019 we have Morocco, Albania as before, but the third place was taken over by British citizens receiving an EU membership, not membership, citizenship. So we can also look at the UK, which were the member states granting the British a citizenship: Germany, Sweden, France, the Netherlands, and others. And here, this is a gold mine of you can play around a lot with this data, comparing, etc., etc. The last part of the population diversity part is rural and urban areas, the differences. We start here with the age groups in urban areas, in intermediate regions, and in rural regions. This differs quite a lot between member states, but at an EU level, what can be seen is that there is a higher share of working age population, aged 20 to 64 in urban regions than in rural. And also here you can play around with the data. If you're interested only in a specific age group, you can choose that age group and rank it accordingly. Here we come back to the so-called high-low chart, which you recognize by now. Here the cross is rural regions, the square are intermediate regions, and the diamond are urban regions. And also this differs between member states, but at an EU level, the fertility rate, which is shown in this visualization, is higher in rural regions than in urban. The fourth part of this publication talks about marital status. So we start with marriages, and we see here the crude marriage rate. The crude marriage rate is the number of marriages per 1,000 persons. You can see here the evolution on an EU level. You can see that it has been slightly going down. And again, you can choose the country you're interested in. Go down a little bit. And here we have Austria as an example, as the first one among the list of countries. You can see that the mean age at first marriage of women has increased quite a lot since 2001. And the same evolution is there for men. The third indicator here is births outside marriage, which for Austria has also increased quite a lot, but recently decreased. And here, in most member states, the trend is that it has increased. Divorces, which is the last part of this chapter. Here we have the crude divorce rate, which has been fluctuating but slightly increased. This was the last visualization that I wanted to show. There are a few things more that I wanted to point out. I talked about that there is direct access to the visualization from our database. You can also click here to access to dataset. Then you come directly to our database, and then you can continue to work with the data in case you would like to see a longer time series, or you would like to extract it, download it in Excel, you want to do your own calculations, then that's possible. Here, up here, for each visualization, we have a share button. You can share the visualization either in Facebook, Twitter, or by email. You can also embed it. Here is a link that you can put on your website, and then the visualization will be shown as I have shown it here on your website. The text, now this is a short text, but the longer or the shorter text can also be shared by Facebook, by Twitter, or by email. Here is the last part of the publication. Here, again, we have the guest tool in case someone couldn't find it on the first page. We have the further information where we have copyright, we have the identifiers, date of extraction, etc., etc. And then here last, we have the PDF version, which is there in case you would like to print the publication. It's not really advisable because this is an interactive publication. So of course, whatever you print, there will be screenshots for the visualizations, but the option is there and it's good to know about. I think I have been telling everything about this publication. Now, of course, I could go on and tell stories about it for hours because there is a lot of information in it, but I think I will stop now.
Thank you very much, Luis. Maybe you could say just a couple of words where this publication could be found. I guess on the front page of Eurostat, but if you think that you could add something important or to link to demographic section, please go ahead.
Absolutely. This publication, of course, now when it's launched, it is found on the Eurostat homepage through the news that we have published today. After that, it will be in the publication section on the Eurostat homepage, and it will also be in what we call our dedicated. These are information sections about demography, which, by the way, I would like to mention, were newly updated this week. So they are brand new with a lot of interesting information.
Okay, thank you very much, Luis. So now the colleagues and the friends who are watching watching this presentation could think about questions and start placing them in Slido, and we'll be ready to answer to these questions. So now I would like to give the floor to the Vice President of the European Commission, Dubravka Šuica, who is leading, as you know, in her portfolio, he is leading the policy part on demographic change in Europe. And as such, he is one of, and her team are very much interested and using heavily Eurostat data related to the population. So I'd like to give the floor for a message from her. Colleagues, please do the transition.
Dear Paolo, dear Mariana, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to address you at today's launch of the Eurostat interactive publication on the demography of Europe. This publication is of great value to me. It directly underpins my work and the various initiatives that are part of the first ever demography portfolio of the European Commission. This highlights the importance of building on tangible synergies between our work and that of Eurostat. We started our cooperation from the early days of the mandate. The first result of our joint efforts was the report on the impact of demographic change adopted in June last year. This report was built entirely on Eurostat data. Eurostat's key facts and figures has helped us identify key demographic trends in the European Union. In addition, this data informs us as we look at ways to anticipate the impact of demographic change on our societies. In January this year, we followed up with a Green Paper on Aging, zooming in on a key demographic trend which significantly influences the future of the European Union. Here again, Eurostat data have guided our reflections. A little over a week ago, we presented our long-term vision for rural areas. This initiative has the ambition to create a new momentum for rural regions based on the opportunities created by green and digital transitions. The vision is also based on the realization that we will only achieve our targets if we factor into our policy making the key demographic trends that are occurring across our Union. The vision also draws on the lessons learned from COVID-19. Without access to statistics and data, we would not have been able to draw concrete conclusions and position demography as a key contributing factor, which underpins virtually all Commission policies and portfolios. Our policies need to be tailored to the needs of our population. The demographic data presented by this publication will help us to analyze the reasons behind the population decline in various parts of Europe, because not every region or member state is affected in the same way. We need to look into questions surrounding brain drain and depopulation. The statistics provided help us to track population change and to address both rapid growth as well as rapid decline. This turn will help us to adjust, where necessary, public services and infrastructures to the needs of our population and thereby to improve the quality of life of all our citizens. On the macro level, the impact of demographic change influences our social fabric and the economic development of our union. It is connected to Europe's ambition to achieve a green and climate-neutral economy. This publication is another key building block for our demography portfolio. It confirms demography as a catalyst for the development and the success of our policies. I congratulate you wholeheartedly on the launch of this publication, and thank you very much for your precious work.
Again, thank you very much to the Vice President. It's always rewarding when all our efforts of our team and all the colleagues in the National Statistical Institutes, we see the result and we see that our data are used and will be used, because this is what we are working for, to produce high quality, reliable, timely data which could support the decision making and also the daily life of the citizens. So now it's time to open the floor for your questions, and I will hand over to Tim Allen from our team, who will moderate this session, and he will distribute questions to the whole team, because we have the whole demographic team here, plus me, ready to answer to your questions. So Tim, please.
Thank you, Mariana. As we asked, if you could place your questions into Slido, where we will extract them, and I'll try and distribute them. So for a first question, we have a first question: is the publication available for other languages than English? I think perhaps Louise is best placed to answer to that one.
Thank you, Tim. The publication at the moment is only available in English, but there is a project and has been in the past for interactive publications to be translated by our colleagues in the different national statistical offices. So in the future it will be translated. I cannot say now to which languages, but since this is if I may say so myself, a very interesting publication, I trust it will be translated into many languages. But this will take a little time. Once there is a new language available, it will be on our website.
Thank you, Louise. We now have a second question. Is there a way to print in, say, JPEG, PDF, the visualizations with the data points for selected countries to use in a publication, for example? So I think what they're asking there is, when you personalize one of the visualization tools, can you print it as personalized? Again, I suspect this is best answered by Louise.
Thank you, Tim. At the moment, what is in the PDF is a so-called screenshot of the visualization in JPEG, only showing the default view. But in fact, this is a very good idea, and we will look into it, whether it will be possible in the future.
Thank you. A third question. Does referring only to women in reference to childbirth statistics reinforce the perception that childbearing and childcare only concerns women? It takes two. I'm not sure who's best placed for this. Perhaps Gianpaolo could. Well, why don't we do childbirth statistics on the father? I think is the underlying question.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you for the question. It is true that this is a long-standing tradition in demographic statistics to collect data on childbirth from the side of the mothers. And there are actually reasons for that. You may think that, for instance, the age span of fertility for the father is a little bit larger than the one for the women. There is sometimes an uncertainty about the fatherhood. And so these elements make it a little bit more complicated to collect information about childbirth for the fathers. It also a little bit more complicated to read because in theory you may also have multiple deliveries attributed to the same father from different women. So all these elements have led the demographic community to focus mainly on childbirth statistics from the mother side. But certainly this doesn't mean reinforcing the perception that childbearing only concerns women, and especially this is only about childbirth, not about childcare. Thank you.
Thank you, Gianpaolo. And I suspect the next question perhaps falls in your area as well, which is we are being asked, will Eurostat collect data on COVID causes of death? I don't know if that's primarily for you or perhaps for one of the others.
Tim, I can take this question. So indeed, statistics on weekly deaths and excess mortality that we have been providing since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic refers to all causes death. In demographic statistics, we do not examine what are the reasons for the death. However, there is a separate and very interesting and rich domain of health statistics that is exactly evaluating the aspects for the reasons of the death. As demographic statistician, I do not feel in the best position to answer about the plans for developing these statistical domains. However, I can say for certain that there are very active discussions on how to enrich statistics.
Thank you, Annie. I'm going to take the moderator's privilege and insert a question of my own here. It's a policy question. It perhaps relates to future work on population statistics, and it's one that I ask because we often get asked this through our social media channels when we release demographic statistics, and that is, what about including, let's use the broad term, the wider rainbow community in our data collection. That is, people who do not necessarily binary identify as male or female. Perhaps data on non-heterosexual partnerships. Are there any plans to expand demographic collections in those directions? I ask because it's a question that my team often get asked by people when we release demographic statistics. I'm not sure who's best placed to answer. Perhaps this is one for Annie or even Mariana on the broader context of demographic statistics into the future.
No, I suggest that Annie or the team answers, because, and then if it's necessary, I will complement.
We are currently working on a major initiative to redevelop European statistics on population. We are currently in the phase of evaluation and impact assessment in order to have a thorough analysis before preparing the future legislative framework for demography, international migration, and population statistics, as we know it from the decennial censuses on population and housing. Actually, at this stage, we cannot say for certain what would be the improvements. However, we know the trends or the needs where the European Union is demanding reinforced statistics. These needs have been mentioned already in the address of Commissioner Gentiloni. The top key priorities are to provide more frequent and more timely data, and to provide additional information detail on migration and various regional breakdowns. So our ambition is to make a good use of the progress at member states level regarding the access to administrative data. This helps to make statistics easily or more easily developed, more efficient, and also timelier. So we are hoping for advancement of availability of population data, for instance, data that users have been receiving only every 10 years with the censuses. There is a good prospect that they may become annual. And very recently, in relation to our experience during the COVID-19 pandemic, we started a reflection on the feasibility of enabling monthly statistics on demography. Of course, these are very early discussions, and only towards the second half of 2022, we would know for certain what would be the new elements of our initiative.
Thank you. Marianne, perhaps you want to add anything, or has Annie comprehensively covered?
No, I think she outlined, and for the sake of the time, and I will speak at the end, of course, so please go ahead with questions, because I see that there are more questions coming.
Yeah, so we have a short question. What are the predictions for birth rate in the coming 10 years? I'm not sure which one of you is best placed to talk on birth rate in the coming years.
I guess I can take this as well. First of all, I would clarify these are projections, not forecasts about the birth rate in the future. Now, projections are and the assumptions upon which these projections are based are developed given a certain framework. And at the time in which those projections were elaborated, the COVID pandemic was not yet in place. We don't know yet what will be the actual impact of the pandemic on fertility rate. We are starting to have the first statistical evidences, but it's very hard to see the extent of the impact and how long is going to last. What was done at the time was essentially to assume that the process of postponement that has been observed in the childbearing in Europe was going to be followed by catching up to a partial extent, which would lead in the years to come to a partial recovery of the fertility rate. Again, of course, the situation is much different across the member states. So for having a detailed answer, I invite you to look also the data that are available in our database. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is one to which I think we can give a very simple and positive answer. I think it is important to give users access to metadata and methodological explanations as well. Will this be possible? I don't know, Gianpaolo, I think the answer to this is straightforward.
Well, yes, I think it's enough that you click on the link to the database, and there you find the metadata and all the explanation. And in the case you would still have doubts about, please feel free to contact Eurostat. We are always very keen to help our users to better understand the statistics.
Yes, if I may insert, there's a little statistician's mantra, which is no data without metadata, and every data set in our database at some level of the database tree has a link to full metadata. So yes. Can you elaborate on why there was a slight decrease in the population in 2020? Is it directly linked to the impact of the pandemic on migration? Gianpaolo, I think that's for you again.
I'm sorry to monopolize the replies. Well, there are several factors playing here in this decrease. For sure, there has been the impact on mortality. We have observed an increase of over 500,000 of deaths as what was observed on average in the previous years. But as I mentioned in a reply just before, there is a likely impact on fertility as well, on the number of births. We still don't see it fully because, of course, there is the biological delay of 9 months at least. And therefore, this evidence should be more and more evident in the months to come. And of course, there has been also an impact on migration, either because the borders have been closed and those who were supposed to move couldn't move in that period, or because people was returning to their home country due to the job losses and so forth. So it's a mix of components. For now, what we see most prominent in the short term is the impact on mortality that has played a major role.
Thank you. Yes, to spread the pain a little more evenly, I'm going to again take moderator's privilege and insert a question of my own to David. David, do you think 2021 is the last time that we'll see a traditional census carried out anywhere in Europe?
That's a very interesting question. I would say already that in the majority of EU member states, there isn't what would be called a traditional census, because 22 member states make use of administrative data sources such as population registers or other government registers. 22 member states are making use of those already, at least to some extent. And already, though the countries that do have a traditional census still, it's not a traditional census in many cases that we might imagine, in that there's a great deal of use made of internet response and also the exchange of forms, sending out census forms and returning census forms by post. It's very hard to predict the future, but I think very clearly that the days of the traditional census are somewhat limited, and it may very well be that 2021 is the last traditional census in Europe.
Thank you, David. The next question I think is probably for Annie, and maybe with an intervention from Mariana. It is, what are the current timelines for the new population regulation?
Thank you, Tim. Our target is that the Commission adopts the proposal for a new framework regulation on European statistics on population in mid-2022. Then the legislative process will continue by the Parliament and the Council, and that will depend on their work, but we are hoping that at the latest by the end of 2023, we may have a brand new regulation on population statistics.
Thank you. Right, I can't see any new questions come in via Slido. We still have a few minutes left. Anna Maria is typing. Let's see if this is no new questions, she says. Okay, so I think we'll round up the Q&A session then. I mean, if I ramble slightly, it will give time for anybody who's typing to finish typing. But right, yes, we have one more question. So indeed, as Louise demonstrated, the British were the third group acquiring citizenship of an EU country in 2019, overtaking more traditional external partners. Do we know which member states granted the largest proportions of citizenships to Britons? I think many of you can answer that. Louise, perhaps you, or Veronica, perhaps you'd like to chip in on this?
Yes, thank you. Maybe I can answer to this question. As It's very interesting question. We can see in the interactive publication that this country is Germany. Germany has almost 46% of granted citizen to former UK citizens. In the visualization, it's possible to see it. There is the chapter on the population diversity and the new EU citizens, and we can see the pie chart. It's quite interesting. Also, Sweden, 15% of citizens, former UK, were granted in Sweden, and yes, I invite readers to dig into these visualizations, which are very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's the end of the Q&A session, and now I will hand back to Mariana to wrap up this presentation. Thank you. Mariana.
Thank you very much, team and colleagues. The last question was a very good transition to the closing, because as you see, once you start looking at the publication and thinking what kind of information you could find, you always could find something interesting. And as Veronica highlighted, there are more interesting insights which you could get when you start, as we say in statistics, play with the data and look at the data. We will take into account the feedback which we received in Slido immediately, because of course when we launch a publication we have a permanent effort to get feedback, and then my colleagues will try to accommodate your suggestions in the ongoing way in the interactive publication. Thank you very much for your interest in general questions about outside the publication, about the Eurostat data and the plans to measure better population changes and population composition in the future. I just want once again to support my colleagues who announced that we are now in a process of gathering information needs, although of course we follow them very closely, in order to prepare an update of statistical framework for demography in Europe, in European Union, and in the next months we will be organizing a number of consultations, including a public consultation. So I would like to ask you to participate very actively, because this is the way when we know the user needs, of course we have to discuss with our partners in the countries, in the member states, because Eurostat doesn't work alone. We work in partnership with the member states, with the national statistical authorities, but we need to know the needs, and then we will discuss with our partners so we could provide the data which are really relevant and with the frequency which is needed and with granularity which is needed. With that, I would like to thank you very much to my colleagues. Don't forget that we have a user support which is very demanded, but our colleagues managed to help all those who would like to have questions or to provide feedback. Use also the social media accounts of Eurostat, where also we would be very happy to get your feedback, but also to promote it further. So I hope, and this will be my in closing, that you join Eurostat with the purpose that data are on people, but data are for people. So as much as we could distribute the Eurostat data and the people could use them, our mission will be completed. So thank you very much to all of you, to my colleagues, and stay in touch and play with the data. Use the data, please. Thank you. Bye from us and see you next time.